Substantiate, to establish by proof or competent evidence. Welcome back to another episode of the Substantiate podcast, where every week I discuss a new hypothetical matchup with a guest. I'm the host, William Glasser, and today I'm joined by Ben Leavitt to talk about the University of Michigan versus the Ohio State University in tailgate games. Ben, tell the listeners what you do and your background with football and Michigan.
For sure, man. Absolutely. Well, first of all, thanks for having me on the show. For anybody who's unaware of myself, again, the name's Ben Leavitt. I'm a social media strategist and a YouTuber. So I create content helping people best leverage social media. And then my connection to football is I played my whole life, like football with my life for a very long time. And I'm a massive Michigan fan. So I'm definitely gonna be a little biased with this, but yeah, that's my connection to Michigan.
Yep, great. And one day I was scrolling through your Instagram feed, and I think it was like your very second post was from the Michigan versus UNLV football game in 2015. And it turns out I was there that day also.
You're there too? That's awesome. That's so cool. What a small world. That's amazing.
Yep. And before we begin, make sure to follow us at substantiatepod on Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook. And you can also check out our website, www.substantiatepod.com. So to anyone that doesn't know, Michigan and Ohio State are, it's fair to say, the biggest rivals in college sports. And so today I've prepared a few matchups between Michigan and Ohio State football and basketball players playing tailgate games such as cornhole and beer pong. So our first matchup of the day is two football head coaches, Jim Harbaugh of Michigan versus Ryan Day of Ohio State in cornhole. So I decided to have the coaches play cornhole because it would probably be a little funny to watch them overthink things in cornhole, you know, to maybe get a little stressed out over the little things. And they were both quarterbacks in college, although Jim Harbaugh obviously played at Michigan and Ryan Day was at like New Hampshire, so much smaller school, but still.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's a good one. I would probably go against Harbaugh here just because I think he's almost too intense for cornhole. Like I feel like it's a game where your emotions can definitely get the best of you because it is such a touch thing. I feel like if things don't go off well for Jim at the beginning, I could see him going off the rails a bit, and then Ryan coming in, staying a little cooler throughout the whole thing and pulling away with that W. What do you think about that one?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, like, as you say that, I can picture Jim Harbaugh in my head, like smashing a headset or something over a missed shot. And, you know, cornhole has many slight variations, like the equipment, the surface of the board, and the slight difference in a weight of the beanbag if you're playing casually like normal people. Yeah. And, you know, just that the different situations, whether it's the bags piling up and having to work around those things, though, Jim Harbaugh has had more, he's had more obstacles in his path as the Michigan head coach than Ryan Day at Ohio State. Obviously, you know, barely lost to Michigan, and Jim Harbaugh, who's winless against Ohio State. So, yeah, could go either way.
That'd be a tough one for sure. Yeah, that would definitely be a lot of fun to watch. I think they'd get a lot of viewers on that one for sure.
Yeah. Yeah, like with ESPN, the Ocho, they had that going on in the U.S.
Yeah, that's
good. Yeah, I remember watching one night, and for like half an hour, they had marbles racing. Like, what?
Yeah, it's desperate times, man. Desperate times.
Yep. All right, so let's move on to our second matchup, which is going to be Giles Jackson and Nico Collins of Michigan versus Chris Olave and Garrett Wilson of Ohio State in Can Jam. So to anyone that doesn't know, Can Jam is the game where there's the two black buckets and there's little slots in the front, and you throw the yellow frisbee and you try to knock it in. And there's different points for whether you get it in the slot, hit it in, get it in on its own, just hit the can in general. But basically, you're trying to throw the frisbee and your teammate smacks it down into the can. So here, all of the players I just mentioned, Giles Jackson, Nico Collins, Chris Olave, and Garrett Wilson, they're all wide receivers for both schools. So they can all move around and, they work with their hands to be able to push or hit the frisbee into the can. So they have somewhat experience with that.
Yeah, no, I'm thinking I like Michigan here simply because I think Nico Collins is a freak athlete. I think his reach would definitely bode well for the Wolverines here because I just think that he could be all over the place. I think he's the X factor in this game. I'm probably going with Michigan on this.
Yeah, I would too. I mean, just the names like, Giles Jackson and Nico Collins, like just in terms of, I don't follow Ohio State obviously as close as I do Michigan, but just in general, when people mention awesome wide receivers in college football these last couple of years, like I feel like you just hear more about Giles Jackson and Nico Collins and those qualities from football that I was mentioning earlier, relating back to Can Jam. And I think would add up, and I think that's a dub for the Wolverines.
Yeah, I think they're pulling through with that one for sure. I just think I can just picture Nico jumping around all over the place and making things happen. So I'm going with the Wolverines here.
Yep, same here. All right, so let's get into our last matchup with Ben today. It is Zach Carpenter and Ambry Thomas of Michigan versus Josh Myers and Sean Wade of Ohio State in spike ball. So to anyone just like Can Jam may not know what spike ball is, there's basically a circular net and a ball that bounces on it, and there's usually teams of two, and you just have to hit it on the net, and almost like tennis, except the net is in and anything else is out. So here, Zach Carpenter is an offensive lineman, 6'5", 329 pounds, and he's partnered with Ambry Thomas, who's a defensive back, 6 foot, 183 pounds. And so then when I was creating the matchup, I tried to mirror it on the other side with Josh Myers, another offensive lineman, 6'5", 312, and Sean Wade, a defensive back, 6'1", 195, all very similar in those statistics. And so I think would be interesting and a little funny to watch some super athletic guys, the defensive backs, go up against the offensive linemen, the bigger guys who might smack the ball down and it could go a mile.
Yeah, no, I love how you position that because there's such a contrast there of the big guys and the small guys with the speed. So that would be really interesting. I think that one would come down to whoever has the better response time in terms of the O lineman. I think whoever can get their hands, because realistically, they're not gonna be able to move like the younger guys, the smaller guys. They're gonna have to be facilitators likely, and then punch it out when it comes to them. But that's a great dynamic there. And I just recently got into spike ball, so this one actually is super, super intriguing. Who do you think pulls out on this one?
On this one, I might have to go with Ohio State. I mean, just because we're both Michigan fans, I feel like the last two, there's no matter how much you say no bias, there's always something psychologically. So, but here, I just feel like Sean Wade, I think he's a little bit faster than Ambry Thomas, and Josh Myers and Zach Carpenter. I mean, they're just both big guys that would crush the ball. And spike ball. And yeah, I might have to go with OSU on this one.
Yeah, it pains me to say it, but I'd probably say the same. I just think that Josh Myers can probably move a little bit better than Carpenter. And
Yeah.
I think obviously not crazy better because they're both pretty similar in size, but I think Myers can move a little bit more. And I think that might be enough to give him the edge. In addition to what you said, like Wade's likely faster. So I'd probably go OSU here as much as I don't like to admit it.
Yeah. Yeah, sometimes I'm like scrolling through Instagram and then you see like an ad for spike ball. And, it's just like these crazy plays and some guys running 50 feet to the left and then to the right and front and back. And they managed to hit the ball, let alone they hit the ball onto the net, that
Yeah, that's
little
great.
circle in the middle where the game's centered. And that would be crazy. I mean, just thinking about it, if these guys, an offensive lineman and a defensive back, if the linemen stayed close to it and the defensive backs, Ambry Thomas and Sean Wade, if they moved around and if they were, trying to hit the ball back to the net, and then the offensive linemen, Zach Carpenter and Sean Myers, they were just sitting there ready to smack it again far, that could make for an interesting dynamic.
Yeah, that'd be good TV for sure, man. And Spike is so fun. It's so competitive too, which is so awesome. So
Yeah.
that'd be a great opportunity for these guys to really get strategic and actually play to their strengths and actually come together as like a team there. That'd be really cool to watch.
Yeah, not just to play to their strengths, but also their weaknesses. They go hand in hand. If the offensive linemen aren't very fast or agile, then, if they're just standing there waiting for the opponent to hit the ball right back, and then they're there to smack it back to the opponent.
Yeah, no, it's you're totally right there. It's actually like that's one of the biggest things with spike ball is figuring out your opponent's weaknesses and then trying to pick on those to get as many points as possible. So that'd probably be the strategy is to try to get the big guys to move and then see if that you can get that to run a little bit too much and then maybe fatigue them before the game's over too.
Yeah, definitely. All right. Well, thank you, Ben, for coming on to my podcast today. Again, anyone listening can find his YouTube channel, Ben Leavitt, on Instagram, Ben Leavitt _, and his amazing podcast, Project Passion.
Yeah, once again, thanks so much for having me on. I think it's a super cool idea what you have here. So definitely keep at it and go blue. It sucks that the season's gone, but we'll survive.
Yep. So I'm going to finish the rest of today's episode solo. So Ben is a very busy and successful man, and I was fortunate enough for him to give me just around 15-20 minutes of his time. So again, I'm going to finish this episode solo with the second and third segment. I go into one final large matchup. And in the third segment, I simulate and give you the results. Have you ever considered starting your own podcast? I did, and look where I am now. I did a lot of research into how to start a podcast and the best way to do it. And basically what I came up with is to start a podcast, there are two major steps. The first one is the most obvious. You need to record and have content to share. With no content, there's no podcast. The second thing is you need to use a podcast host to create an RSS feed and submit it to the different directories. Buzzsprout is by far the best and easiest way to do that. Buzzsprout has a how to start a podcast guide that sets you up with every step to share your podcast. The team at Buzzsprout is passionate about helping you succeed. I once emailed them at around 10:30 p.m. with a support question. They responded within 15 minutes. Although I cannot guarantee that will happen every time, that is an example of how committed Buzzsprout is to help you succeed. Now, I know what you're thinking. This all sounds so great. It must be so expensive. Well, you're wrong. They have plans starting at just $12 a month. And if you use my referral link, after your second paid invoice, they'll give you a free $20 Amazon gift card. So to find that referral link, you can go to the show notes / description of this episode, or you can go to our website, www.substantiatepod.com, and then click on this episode, and then it'll pop up somewhere on the right side of your screen. They also have a 90-day free trial. So if you're not totally sure yet if you want to fully commit to this, you can do that for 90 days with no charge. So again, continuing on with the second segment, we are going to continue with Isaiah Livers of Michigan versus Caleb Wesson of Ohio State playing beer pong. So Isaiah Livers and Caleb Wesson, they are both sharpshooters for their respective basketball teams. All right, so now I think most people know what beer pong is, but some people don't know necessarily the exact rules of playing it. So obviously it's a party / tailgate game. You throw the ping pong ball into the red plastic cups, and obviously once you've and it in there, the other team has to drink it, and then you continue on, and then the game ends eventually when either someone quits or all the cups are gone. And the way that we're going to play today is each player gets 2 shots and then they switch. And so basically, obviously, beer pong is going to be a little more interesting than your regular tailgate game like I discussed with Ben, because here you're going to have another factor going into this, which is how are they going to perform when they're drinking. Now, I'm obviously under the age of drinking, so I don't have first-hand experience with this. So ideally, I would be looking at some second half stats from Isaiah Livers and Caleb Wesson to, so once they start to get tired and late in the game, to analyze some of how that is going to work. But unfortunately, it is not as easy as you might think to find stats for specifically the second half online or on ESPN. So instead, what I'm going to do to sort of analyze this in a little more of a statistic way is, so here from ESPN.com, what I'm looking at right now, in the 2019 to 2020 season, which was obviously cut short, Caleb Wesson played an average 29.5 minutes, and in 2018 to 19, 25.9 minutes. And so this year, again, 2019 to 20, Isaiah Livers played 31.5 minutes per game. And in 2018 to 19, it was 22.6. So he's really boosted up. So one thing that I noticed from Isaiah Livers in 2017 to 18 and 18 to 19 is that, especially in the NCAA tournament in 2019, he would get fouls a lot early in the game. So even if I could find these second half stats, Isaiah Livers, if he got his second foul, say 14 minutes into the first half, then Juwan Howard or in 2018 to 19, John Bailey, he'd take him out, right? 2 fouls. He got like 5 fouls to give in college before you get ejected from the game. And so, that's just managing it. So obviously we see some of those direct correlations between 2018 to 19, averaging 22.6 minutes per game, and then 19 to 20, all the way up to 31. So that is just some of their, late game things. So I'm not going to analyze the effects of drinking on them too much, because it's kind of hard to predict how that will play out. I haven't watched either of these players, Isaiah Livers or Caleb Wesson, drinking or anything. I haven't studied the way that they last after 3 cans of beer or whatever. But so something that we can get into is, just their accuracy, right? So first of all, let's look at their turnovers. So in 2019 to 20, over the 31 and a half minutes that Isaiah Livers averaged, he only averaged 0.9 turnovers. So then we look at Caleb Wesson, and he averaged 2.5 turnovers in just 29 and a half minutes. So specifically, that doesn't mean too much. It's just passing mostly, or ball handling, right? Turnover or a foul. But it does show a little bit of the intensity of each player. A turnover is looked at as sloppy, and I mean, beer pong, if you're playing it at a party or tailgate, it's not too intense or ultra competitive, but it's still the kind of thing where you don't want to be sloppy like that. It's a game of small differences that can win or lose it, just like basketball. And so if you're averaging 2.5 turnovers rather than 0.9, it's just another sign of being a little sloppy and less accurate. Now, another thing we can analyze with passing, though, is the assists per game. So in the 2019 to 20 season, Caleb Wesson averaged 1.9 assists, and Isaiah Livers only averaged 1.1 assists. So, they're not point guards. They're both forwards, both excellent shooters. But you look at that, and they're really not passing players. So that's probably not going to give us too much. But now we can look at some other shooting percentages: field goal, 3-point, and free throw. So now let's look into what does each percentage show us. Right, so field goal, that's just everything. That's everything from dunks to deep twos, and then threes, all just standard 3-point field goal. They're almost all jump shots. And then you have the free throw percentage. You're just standing there. All the pressure's on you, just standing there. And so at first, you'd probably think that the free throw percentage most accurately represents things. But like I was saying before, the drinking does play factor. So rather than just standing there and shooting, towards the end of the game, it may not be as similar to that. So, however, at the beginning of the game, starting it off, Caleb Wesson, his free throw percentage in the 2019 to 20 season was 73.1, and in 18 to 19, 73.4%. But then you come over to Isaiah Livers. In 2019 to 20, his free throw percentage, 95.7. Okay, that is incredible. So if we sort of walk through this game, all right, so now we can say that maybe Isaiah Livers has an early lead. So if he goes first, then let's say he gets the first 2 cups, and then Caleb Wesson's going to come back, and he's going to make one of 2, just because of his lower free throw percentage. So he's already had a couple cups of beer. And so now Caleb Wesson, we're going to look more towards his field goal percentage. So that's going to be lower than free throw, obviously, because this is going to include more intense shots. However, at the same time, it also does include dunks and layups, right? So his field goal percentage in the 2019-20 season is 44.4%, right? So that is a relatively good field goal percentage, especially for someone that's not going in there for dunks and layups too much, mostly a jump shot guy or fadeaway, of that sort. And to the middle of the game, we're looking at the field goals. And so now, say here, he's not going to be as good as the free throws, but if he makes one, then let's send it back to Isaiah Livers, right? So that was just looking ahead to his next turn. So right now, Livers is up 2-1, obviously looking to get to 10, just in terms of the amount of cups that they got it into. All right, so now we have Livers' field goal percentage, which in the 19-20 season was 40.2, which was actually a point and a half lower than the 2018-19 season. Isaiah Livers' field goal percentage was 44.7 in the 19-20 season. In the 2018-19 season, his field goal percentage was 48.7, right? So that's a 4-point difference. So he's on the decline in terms of his field goal percentages, but Isaiah Livers, still, he's got that 44.7. So let's say he makes one. So now Livers is up 3-1. All right, so now let's head back to Caleb Wesson. Here, he's still in the field goal percentage range, not yet 3-point. And so now we're looking at it. He's got 44.4% field goal percentage, right? And that is going to be, again, 5.5 percentage points lower than 2018-19. So again, if we take something sort of in between that, and let's say he makes one, then passes the ball back to Livers. So now we have Livers with 3, Livers with 3, and Wesson with 2. So now we're back to Livers, right? And so Livers, he's still got his field goal range, so let's say he makes one again, right, with that 44.7 field goal percentage. So now it's Wesson's turn. And Wesson, with his 44.4, he's going to make another 1 out of 2. All right, now let's come back to Livers. Right now the score is 5-3. And, all right, so we've got the field goal percentage is here, and let's say Livers misses 2 this time. So now it's 5-3, and now it's Wesson's turn. Now, Wesson, he's had 5 cups of beer, same as the last turn. But now we're going to be going somewhere in between field goal and 3-point percentage, right? It's a little later into the game. It's starting to kick in maybe a little more. Now we're into, say, the 43% range. Wesson is going to make another 1 out of 2. So now it's up to 5-4. And Isaiah Livers comes back. Now this time, again, we're going to be going back a little bit because Livers has only had 4 cups so far, so still in the field goal. And 44.7% field goal percentage, just like I was saying before. And he is going to make 1 out of 2. So now it's 6-4. So now from here on out, we can just simulate it basically. So Isaiah Livers' 3-point percentage this year was 40.2. And then Caleb Wesson's was 42.5. Both very similar, but is that 2% going to be enough? Now, also another thing we should take into account is that from 2018 to 19 to 2019 to 20, Caleb Wesson's three-point percentage went up dramatically by almost 8 percentage points. So he's on the incline, and Isaiah Livers, who went down in his three-point percentage, is now on the decline. So now, let's say we took it to the next year to make this a little more interesting, right? So say Wesson went up another 3 points. Let's say Livers went down another 3 points. So then we're looking at around 40% and 45%. Now, is that difference going to be enough to give Wesson the game? So I am going to pause my recording right now, and then I'm going to simulate the rest of the game with just some percentages on Google, and then I will tell you what the results are. Are you looking for the perfect gift or party favor? Look no further than Tie-Dye by MS for custom tie-dye clothing and accessories for women, men, and children. You choose the style and colors, and they do the rest. They have lots of different tie-dye techniques to choose from that all look fantastic. And they have amazing low prices for their stunning items. For example, I'm on their website right now, and they sell cropped tank tops for just $12, t-shirts for just $15, kids t-shirts for $10, and hoodies for $30, as well as many other awesome items and clothing. Check them out on Instagram at Tie-Dye by MS, and you can visit their website, www.tiedyebyms.com. Again, you can check them out on Instagram at Tie-Dye by MS and visit their website at www.tiedyebyms.com. Alright, so when I left off, the score was Livers 6, Wesson 4, and obviously they're trying to get to 10. And so I put in the 3-point percentages. I put Wesson as 45 and Livers at 40. And with that already 2-point difference, but Wesson is going first. So on Wesson's turn, he made 0. And again, I used a website called shodor.org and used an adjustable spinner. Right, so Wesson made 0 on his first turn, and then Livers made both. Okay. So now it's 4-8, Wesson's turn. Then Caleb Wesson makes both. So now it's 8-6, Livers' turn. He makes just 1. So now Wesson makes his first one. So it's 7-9. But he, unfortunately for him, misses the second one. So now it's 9-7. Can Livers finish it off? And he makes the first shot. So again, I was doing that based off of those percentages that I was talking about on an adjustable spinner on shodor.org. And I used that to simulate the rest of that game. So that is going to be a win for Livers. That is going to do it for this week's episode of the Substantiate podcast. Before this episode ends, however, I want to thank Ben Leavitt again for coming on to this week's episode. You can find Ben's YouTube channel with his amazing Instagram and podcast videos. His channel is just called Ben Leavitt, BenLeavitt. His Instagram is benlevitt_, and his podcast is called Project Passion. So you can check all of those out with links in the show notes. And make sure that you subscribe or follow us on whatever app you're listening to this podcast on. And if you're listening on Apple Podcasts, please make sure to give us a 5-star review. Don't forget to come back next week for another amazing episode. Next week's episode is fantastic. I think you're really going to like it. Once again, you can follow us on Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook. We got all 3 at substantiatepod. And visit our website, www.substantiatepod.com. Also, you can send us an email with questions or comments to substantiatepod@gmail.com. All of those links to Ben's social medias and this podcast's social medias are down in the show notes. If you're listening on Apple Podcasts, just scroll down on this episode and you'll see all of them. And also, like I was telling you earlier about Buzzsprout, that is the easiest way to start a podcast. The link to that is down below in the show notes also. When you sign up, after your second payment, you will get a $20 Amazon gift card. So if you want to start a podcast, that is a no-brainer, the best way to do so. They helped me out a ton. Thank you for listening to this episode of Substantiate. The best way to help support the show is to, number 1, tell your friends about Substantiate. That is the number 1 way to support us. The second way is to leave us a 5-star review in Apple Podcasts or Podchaser. Number 3, follow us at substantiatepod on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook.
Hello, I'm Anthony.
And I'm Dr. Issues.
And we're hosts of Capes on the Couch, the podcast where comics get counseling.
Superheroes don't always get to go home happy. That's where we come in.
We offer psychiatric and mental health analysis of comic book characters.
So check us out at capesonthecouch.live and across all social media platforms at Capes on the Couch.